My mother raised me to believe she was my only true family. For 30 years, she was my rock, my guiding star. But when she looked me in the eye and told me my wife was using me and then accidentally deleted my business plan, I didn't see the monster. I saw my mother. But the day my wife left with our daughter, the truth finally hit me like a ton of bricks. My mother wasn't my rock. She was my prison warden. The scent was a trinity: burnt coffee, hot metal, and the sharp tanks of gasoline. It was the smell of my sanctuary, the perfume of my sovereignty, Jamal's auto repair. It wasn't much to look at from the road. A squat cinder block building with three bay doors perpetually open like mouths waiting to be fed, their faded blue paint flaking away in sun bleached patches. But inside, it was a cathedral of controlled chaos. The rhythmic hiss of pneumatic wrenches, the percussive clang of steel on concrete, the guttural roar of a resurrected engine. That was my choir. I'd built this place from the grease stained ground up, starting with a second-hand toolbox and a chip on my shoulder the size of a flywheel. My father, a man who could diagnose an engine knock from a block away, had walked out on us when I was 15, leaving behind a box of rusty tools, a mountain of debt, and a void that felt like a missing cylinder in the engine of our family. My mother, Gloria, never let me forget it. She also never let me forget that he'd failed. His own garage swallowed by bad bets and worse bookkeeping. So when I built mine, I built it on a foundation of pure, spiteful determination. I would not fail. Now, with two solid mechanics, Sal and Ricky, by my side, and a reputation for honesty that was worth more than any advertisement, we were turning away work. It was a small kingdom, but it was solvent, and it was mine. Sal, a man whose forearms were a roadmap of scars and whose wisdom was as deep as an oil pan, had been with me from the early days. He'd seen me break down in frustration over a seized bolt and celebrate landing my first fleet contract. He was more of a father to me than my own had ever been. Ricky was the kid, barely 22, with a savant like ability with diagnostics and a phone that seemed surgically attached to his hand. But he was quick and he was loyal. They were my lieutenants, the gears that kept my kingdom running smoothly. The real treasure, however, wasn't under a hydraulic lift. It was through a connecting door in the small house that shuddered every time a truck pulled into the lot. There, the industrial smell surrendered to the scent of Chloe's lemon verbena soap and the faint sweet powder smell of our daughter, Maya. Chloe was the high octane fuel my life ran on. She was a paralegal, her mind a beautiful, intricate machine of logic and detail that complemented my own hands on intuition. We'd met when her beat up sedan had died on the freeway, steam pouring from under the hood like a dragon's sigh. I'd fixed a cracked distributor cap and found myself captivated by the way she laughed, a sound that could strip rust, as she explained the legal brief she'd been late to file. She saw the world in possibilities, in frameworks and strategies. Where I saw a busted transmission, she saw a system waiting to be made whole. She saw the potential in the chaos. And Maya, our 6 year old daughter, was the spark plug that ignited our world, a whirlwind of tangled pigtails and questions about why oil was black. She believed her daddy was a magician who spoke the secret language of cars. For her, I would have drained the oceans and refilled them with premium unleaded. Our weekends were sacred, filled with pancake breakfasts where Maya would inevitably get syrup in her hair, and trips to the park where I would push her on the swing until my arms ached. Her shrieks of, "Higher, Daddy, higher," the sweetest music I knew. But our Eden had a snake, my mother, Gloria. She lived with us, a situation that had evolved from temporary necessity into an immovable fact of our lives. After my father left, Gloria had worked herself to the bone, or so the story went, holding down two jobs to keep a roof over our heads. Her mantra, repeated until it was etched onto my soul, was, "It's you and me against the world, Jamal." Blood is the only thing that doesn't run out on you. When Chloe and I married, bringing mom into our home seemed the only decent thing to do. She'd sold her small mortgaged house and given me the meager proceeds to invest in the business, a gesture that was less a gift and more a purchase of a permanent seat at our table. I'm not long for this world, baby, she'd sigh, a delicate hand fluttering to her chest in a gesture she'd perfected over decades. I just want to spend my last days with my family. That was 7 years ago. Chloe, with a heart more generous than I deserved, had welcomed her. She'd tried. Lord, how she'd tried. She learned to cook mom's favorite bland pot roast, a dish that defied all her culinary instincts. She listened patiently, for hours, to the same rambling stories about the old neighborhood, about slights from neighbors who had died 20 years ago. She'd buy her the expensive French hand creams Gloria claimed were the only thing that helped her delicate skin, creams that would then be left on a shelf, unused, a silent testament to Chloe's failure to please. But it was like trying to pour water into a bucket with no bottom. Gloria's affection was a currency she dispensed only to me, leaving Chloe in a state of perpetual emotional poverty. Every compliment to me was paired with a subtle critique of Chloe. Jamal, you look so tired. You work so hard. It's a shame Chloe can't make you that soup you like. Her stomach is probably too delicate for it. Or, after Chloe had spent a whole Saturday cleaning, Gloria would run a finger along a high shelf, inspect it for dust, and sigh, "Don't you worry, honey. I'll get that later. You have to rest." Her frailty was a carefully curated performance. Her hands, which trembled with theatrical weakness whenever a jar of pickles needed opening, were as steady as a surgeon's when she was repotting her prize winning orchids, a hobby she pursued with a ruthless, competitive zeal. A sudden dizzy spell would invariably strike whenever Chloe proposed a weekend away for just the three of us. Yet she possessed the stamina of a marathon runner if I offered to take her to the casino for the day, her lucky feeling conveniently overriding any physical ailment. Her greatest weapon, the one she deployed with devastating precision, was the ghost of my father. His abandonment was not a scar, it was a wound she kept perpetually septic, probing it whenever she felt her influence wane. "He left us with nothing but heartache, Jamal," she'd murmur, her voice a fragile whisper, usually in Chloe's earshot. "That's what men do, and women who aren't your blood. They see a good man, a successful man like you, and they get ideas. They want to take what you've built. You have to be so careful." For years, I existed in the demilitarized zone between them, a frantic, inept peacekeeper. I'd explain away my mother's barbs as products of a bygone era, of a hard life. "She's just old fashioned, honey," I'd plead with Chloe late at night in the strained quiet of our bedroom. "She doesn't see how she sounds. She's just protective." I was the willing accomplice to my own wife's psychological dismantling, and I was too proud and too blind to see it. The tremor that would eventually bring my world down began not with an argument, but with a dream. Chloe's dream, but she laid it at my feet like a gift, making it ours. It was a Tuesday night. Maya was asleep, her breathing a soft rhythm through the baby monitor. Mom was ensconced in the living room, the saccharine sounds of her favorite game show, a familiar grating backdrop to our lives. Chloe cleared the dinner dishes and spread a sheaf of papers across the scarred oak of our kitchen table, her eyes alight with a fire I hadn't seen in years. It was the fire of creation, of ambition, and it was beautiful. "Look," she said, her voice a low, excited hum. Her finger, elegant and sure, tapped a printed satellite image of a long, low building. "The old Henderson warehouse, down by the freight yards. It's been vacant for a year since the logistics company went under. Jamal, it's perfect. 6 bays, a real office, a customer waiting area that doesn't smell like transmission fluid, enough square footage to finally have a dedicated bay for heavy duty trucks and another for rebuilds. He stared at the documents. This wasn't a vague wish, it was a battle plan, a meticulously researched, fully costed 40-page business proposal. She had demographic data, traffic flow analysis, cash flow projections that spanned 5 years, broken down quarterly. She'd gotten 3 different quotes for renovating the space, complete with material specs and timelines. She'd even secured a pre approval letter for a substantial business loan from our bank, contingent on my final sign off and a review of the full plan. She'd designed a new logo, a stylized J and C intertwined to form the image of a piston, encircled by the name J&C Automotive. Chloe, this is a masterpiece, I breathed, the sheer professionalism of it staggering. The numbers were huge, terrifying. The loan amount made my stomach clench. But the loan, that's a hell of a risk. That's more than my father ever owed. The words were out before I could stop them, a reflex conditioned by years of my mother's warnings. The risk is standing still, she countered immediately, her conviction a tangible force in the room. The risk is letting your talent be constrained by these 3 small bays. You told me yourself you and Sal had to turn away 3 major transmission jobs last week because you don't have a dedicated lift free. You're the best, most trusted mechanic in this entire county, and you're operating out of a garage that's bursting at the seams. This isn't a risk, Jamal. It's an investment in your talent, in our family, in Maya's future. Her belief in me was like a physical pressure, inflating my lungs, pushing out the stale air of doubt that my mother had so carefully pumped in for years. We could do this. We, the word felt solid, like something I could hold, a piece of forged steel. We stayed up until 2 in the morning, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, poring over the details, the numbers, the dream. She walked me through the spreadsheets, explaining amortization schedules and depreciation with a clarity that made the terrifying numbers feel manageable, conquerable. The future, which for so long had felt like a narrow, winding road I was navigating alone, suddenly opened up into a multi-lane superhighway. I saved the entire proposal, every last document and spreadsheet, into a folder on my desktop labeled J&C Automotive Expansion, a digital blueprint for our new life. The next morning, the dream collided with the dragon. Gloria was in the kitchen, humming a discordant tune, her face arranged into an expression of gentle, loving concern. She'd overheard our excited murmurs. "Oh, baby," she began, placing a hand on my forearm as I reached for the coffee pot. Her skin felt cool and dry, like old paper. "That sounds like such an enormous burden. All that debt. It just brings back such terrible memories. A loan that big. What if something goes wrong? What if there's a recession?" Chloe is a very bright girl, but she doesn't understand the grease and the grit. She doesn't know the sacrifices we made to build what you already have. The "we" was a subtle, sharp jab at Chloe, a claiming of my success that erased my wife's contribution entirely. "We didn't build it, Mom. I did," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "And Chloe's plan isn't just an idea, it's airtight. She's been working on this for months, in secret, to surprise me." "Of course, dear," she said, her eyes flicking towards Chloe, who was at the counter, her back to us, meticulously pouring a bowl of cereal for Maya. I could see the tension in the set of her shoulders. "I'm just worried about my boy. You work so hard. I would hate to see someone take advantage of your good nature. People with big ideas often don't think about the little people they might hurt if things go south." The insinuation hung in the air, a drop of colorless poison in a glass of water. Chloe's hand tightened on the handle of the coffee pot, her knuckles white. She said nothing. She didn't have to. The first shot in the war for my future had been fired. Gloria's ensuing campaign was a masterwork of covert warfare, a series of accidents and misunderstandings, so exquisitely timed they bordered on genius. The first strike was against the digital heart of our dream. I came home from a grueling day at the shop, my body aching but my mind buzzing with plans, eager to review the proposal with Chloe one more time before the bank meeting. I sat at the desk in our small home office, the one crowded into a corner of the living room, booted up the computer, and double clicked the folder. An error message popped up. This item is no longer located here. Verify the item's location and try again. A cold dread washed over me. I searched the desktop. I searched the entire hard drive. I checked the recycle bin. The folder, JNC Automotive Expansion, was gone. Not just the contents. The entire folder had been wiped from existence. What's wrong? Chloe asked from the doorway. A stack of folded laundry in her arms, her face clouded with concern at my obvious panic. The plan, I stammered, my fingers flying uselessly across the keyboard, running search commands that all came up empty. The business plan, it's gone. The whole thing vanished. At that precise moment, Gloria shuffled into the room, a feather duster in one hand, her movements a study in practiced infirmity. Her timing was, as always, impeccable. Oh, Jamal, I was just trying to be helpful, she said, her voice quavering with manufactured frailty. The computer was making that whirring noise again, and you always complain it's so slow. I was just wiping the dust off the screen, and then a little box popped up with all these words. I didn't know what it was, so I just clicked the yes button to make it go away. It seemed like the helpful thing to do. Did I do something wrong? She looked at me, her eyes wide and glistening with the burgeoning of perfectly formed tears. It was a performance worthy of a stage. Chloe stood frozen in the doorway, the laundry forgotten in her arms. Her expression was a mask of cold, incredulous fury. You clicked yes to a pop-up that likely asked if you wanted to permanently delete the selected folder and all its contents? Chloe's voice was dangerously quiet, each word a chip of ice. The one folder that was highlighted, sitting right in the middle of the screen? I don't understand these complicated machines, Gloria wailed, her performance crescendoing into full-blown hysterics, the feather duster dropping to the floor with a soft thud. I don't know what I did. I was just trying to help my son. Why is she always so cruel to me? And I, the fool, the trained animal, fell for it completely. The programming was too deep, the guilt too ingrained. I rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her trembling shoulders, murmuring comforting words. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. It was an accident, I said, my voice gentle. I shot a warning glare at Chloe over my mother's head, a look that said, back off. We can rebuild it. I have most of the numbers in my head. Chloe has her notes. You see? Gloria sobbed, burying her face in my chest, her small body shaking. Her voice was muffled, but her words were perfectly clear, aimed directly at my wife. She's always so angry with me. She's blaming your poor old mother for a simple mistake. The argument that night in our bedroom was apocalyptic. It was a storm that had been gathering for years. You cannot possibly believe that was an accident, Jamal, Chloe seethed, pacing the small space between the bed and the dresser, her body vibrating with a rage she had held in check for years. She despises this plan. She despises that I'm part of your success. She did it on purpose, and you just stood there and comforted her. You're being paranoid, I shot back, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. A cold knot of doubt was tightening in my stomach, but admitting she might be right felt like a betrayal of my entire life. Defend Mom. Protect Mom. She's a 70-year-old woman who thinks a mouse is a rodent. She doesn't know how to delete a file. Give her a break. A break? She just vaporized months of my work, our entire future, and you want me to give her a break? Chloe's voice cracked, tears of pure frustration streaming down her face. For God's sake, Jamal, open your eyes. I saw her sitting at your desk this afternoon. When I came home, she was just staring at the screen. When she saw me, she jumped like she'd been caught. She is playing you like a fiddle, and you are letting her compose the damn symphony. She's my mother. She sacrificed everything for me after Dad left. Loving you and owning you are not the same thing, Chloe cried, her face a portrait of agony. And you are letting her win. Every time you defend her, every time you make an excuse for her, you are choosing her over me. You're choosing her over us. The conversation ended there. We lay in bed, a frozen continent between us, the silence screaming louder than our shouts had. The chill that emanated from that divide would never fully dissipate. I lay there, stewing in righteous indignation, convinced I was defending the innocent, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sleeping next to the real victim. The second strike was more insidious, more dangerous. A week later, Chloe, having miraculously pieced together a condensed version of the proposal from her scattered notes and backed up spreadsheets on her work laptop, was on her way to a rescheduled meeting with the bank manager. It was a Hail Mary attempt to keep the loan application alive. An hour after she left, my phone rang at the shop. Her voice was thin and shaky, stretched taut with fear and adrenaline. Jamal. I'm on the shoulder of the bypass. The car. The brake pedal went soft. It went almost to the floor. It felt like stepping on a sponge. I pulled over, and now there's fluid leaking everywhere under the front wheel. My blood ran cold. The image of the bypass, with cars flying by at 70 miles an hour, flashed in my mind. I threw my tools down, yelled to Sal I had an emergency, and peeled out of the shop in my truck, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I found her standing by her sedan, her arms wrapped around herself, looking small and vulnerable on the side of the busy highway as trucks thundered past, shaking the very ground. I got under the car, the warm asphalt scraping my back. It took me less than 10 seconds to see it. The bleeder valve on the front left brake caliper was loose, not just a little loose from vibration. It was backed off by at least 2 full turns, greasy and wet with fresh brake fluid that was dripping steadily onto the pavement. This doesn't just happen. A valve like that is tightened for a reason. It requires a wrench. Someone had intentionally opened it. When I emerged from under the car, wiping the corrosive fluid from my hands and told her, her face went ashen. "Oh my God," she whispered, a hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a horror that went beyond her own close call. "Maya. I dropped Maya off at school this morning. She was in the car with me. We came down the big hill by the park." The thought hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. My daughter, my little girl, could have been. I couldn't even form the words. The image of a car crash, of Maya's small body in her car seat. A primal volcanic rage and terror surged through me. I towed the car back to the shop, the drive a silent grim procession. Sal, my grizzled lead mechanic who had seen everything, took one look at the caliper as I hoisted the car on the lift. "No damn way that came loose on its own, boss," he said, wiping his hands on a rag and shaking his head slowly. "Vibration can't do that. Not 2 full turns. Someone put a wrench on that. 100%. On purpose." He looked at me, his eyes full of a question I wasn't ready to answer. That night, my rage had a single target. I stormed into the house, my mind a storm of accusations. Gloria was in her armchair, a beatific smile on her face as she watched a cooking show, a pastel-colored Afghan draped over her lap. "Mom," I said, my voice tight as a piano wire, "did you go anywhere near Chloe's car today? In the garage?" She looked up, her smile faltering into well-rehearsed confusion. "Why no, baby? You know I don't drive. I was just in the garage for a moment this morning, looking for my little gardening trowel. I think it fell behind the big red toolbox. Why do you ask? Is something wrong? The brakes failed on the highway. Someone tampered with them. Her hand flew to her chest, her eyes widening in a flawless imitation of horror. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Oh my heavens! Is Chloe all right? Is the baby all right? Oh, Jamal, that's terrifying. You see, this is exactly what I've been trying to tell you. I stared at her, my mind reeling, desperately trying to process her words. Tell me what? Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper, and she leaned forward, her eyes darting around as if spies were listening. This woman, she's so distracted, so consumed by this business scheme of hers. She's getting careless, Jamal. Reckless. What if she's not maintaining the car properly? What if her mind is so full of numbers and plans that she's not paying attention to what matters? She could have killed my grandbaby Jamal. This obsession with your money, with taking over your business, it's making her a danger to your child. It was diabolical. It was genius. She took my deepest, most primal fear, the safety of my child, and she twisted it, sharpened it, and aimed it directly at my wife. She didn't just deny her own involvement, she weaponized the event against Chloe. She planted the seed of a monstrous doubt. What if Chloe, in her ambition, had become negligent? What if she was the threat? It was insane. It was illogical. But the terror for Maya was a blinding, irrational force. And my mother, the master manipulator, knew exactly how to wield it. The poison spread through my veins, a slow creeping paralysis of my reason. I started watching Chloe, questioning her every move. My enthusiasm for the expansion curdled into suspicion. Her ambition now looked like a character flaw. Her frustration with my mother seemed like instability. And Gloria was there every single day, a constant, gentle presence, nurturing the poison. She's not content with the wonderful life you've given her, Jamal. Some women are never satisfied. They always want more. A good wife builds her husband up. She doesn't try to run his life for him. She should be supporting you, not pushing you into debt. I just have this terrible feeling she's going to run you into the ground, take everything you've built, and then leave you high and dry, just like your father did to me. The signs are all there, baby. I see them because I've lived it. That was the kill shot. The comparison I'd heard my entire life. It was the button she had installed in my psyche when I was 15, and she was pressing it now with all her might. It triggered every deep-seated fear of abandonment, of failure, of history repeating itself. My father's failure wasn't just a story. It was my original sin, a genetic flaw I was terrified of repeating. The final catastrophic confrontation was inevitable. Chloe, resilient and determined, had somehow managed to reconstruct the proposal yet again. She'd worked late nights for 2 weeks, her face etched with exhaustion and a deep, abiding sadness that had replaced the fire in her eyes. She presented it to me one evening, not with the bright-eyed hope of before, but with the quiet desperation of a final appeal. "This is it, Jamal," she said, her voice flat. "This is our last chance to make the bank's deadline. I just need you to sign. I need to know you're in this with me, that you're still my partner, that you still trust me." I looked at the papers, at the beautiful J&C Automotive logo, and all I could see was risk. All I could hear were my mother's insidious whispers, echoing my father's failures. I looked at my wife, the love of my life, the mother of my child, and I didn't see her. I saw the caricature my mother had so expertly painted, a grasping, reckless, ambitious woman who was a danger to us all. I pushed the papers back across the table. My voice, when it came out, was cold and dead, an alien sound in my own ears, a ventriloquist dummy speaking my mother's lines. I can't expand right now. The risk is too great. Mom needs me. You're just trying to take what's mine. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and radioactive. Chloe stared at me, and I watched, in real time, as the last light of hope in her eyes was extinguished. It wasn't a dramatic shattering, it was a silent, catastrophic implosion. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She just gave a single, slow, final nod. It was the nod of a person accepting a terminal diagnosis. Okay, she whispered. The sound was the quietest, most devastating thing I had ever heard. I understand now. She stood up, turned, and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her soft footsteps on the stairs, the gentle click of our bedroom door closing. I sat there alone at the table, the architect of my own ruin, feeling a sick, hollow sense of victory. I had protected my business. I had stood by my mother. I had done the right thing. I had never been more wrong in my entire life. The next afternoon, I came home from the shop to a house cloaked in an unnatural silence. The usual sound of a children's movie was absent. The scent of Chloe's soap was gone, replaced by the stale, dusty smell of an empty space. There was no scent of crayons, no sign of Maya's scattered toys. On the kitchen table, where our dream had been born and where it had died, was a single sheet of paper. Chloe's elegant cursive script looked stark and alien. Jamal, I can't live in this house anymore. I can't keep fighting your mother for a place in your heart. I can't stand by and watch you choose her narrative over our reality, over our daughter's safety and happiness. Maya and I have gone to stay with my sister. I will be in touch through a lawyer about arrangements. I will always love the man I married. I just can't be with the man you've become. Chloe. I bolted up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs, taking them two at a time. Her side of the closet was a cavern of empty hangers. Her books were gone from the nightstand. Maya's room was unnervingly neat, her menagerie of stuffed animals gone from the shelves. Her favorite, a threadbare giraffe named Rafi with one button eye, was missing from its customary spot on her pillow. The silence in that small room was a physical presence. It pressed down on me, squeezing the air from my lungs, suffocating me in the vacuum she and Maya had left behind. I stumbled back into the hallway, my legs giving out from under me, and slid down the wall to the floor, the rough texture of the wallpaper scraping my back. That was when the first brick of truth slammed into me. The silence, the emptiness. This was my mother's victory. This was the safety she had engineered for me. An empty house, a broken family, a silent phone. Gloria found me there, a crumpled heap of a man. She knelt beside me, her face a perfect mask of maternal sympathy. But I was beginning to see the cracks. Oh, my poor, poor baby, she cooed, stroking my hair she had when I was a boy with a scraped knee. See? I told you she was bad news. She couldn't handle being a real wife, a real mother. She left you. But it's for the best. You'll see. It will hurt for a little while. But I'm here. Now you're free. Now we can finally focus on our future. Just you and me. The way it was always meant to be. She helped me to my feet, her grip surprisingly strong for such a frail woman. I looked into her eyes, which were shining with a disturbing, triumphant light, and I finally saw it. I didn't see a comforter. I saw a predator, sleek and satisfied after a successful hunt. I saw the monster in my mother's skin. The following weeks were a descent into a gray, featureless hell. The house became a mausoleum, each room an exhibit of a life I had murdered. Chloe's half-finished novel on the nightstand, a single, tiny pink sock under the sofa that I couldn't bring myself to pick up. Maya's finger painting of our family, a smiling stick figure mommy, a tall stick figure daddy, and a small stick figure girl holding both their hands, stuck to the refrigerator with a cartoon car magnet. I would stand and stare at it until my eyes burned, tracing the lines with my finger. I called Chloe 100 times. She never picked up. She would only respond to texts about logistics for Maya, her replies curt and clinical. I spoke to Maya every night on FaceTime, her small, confused face a fresh torture. When are we coming home, Daddy? I miss my room. I miss Raffy. I miss you. Each word was another turn of a serrated blade in my gut. Is Grandma why Mommy left? She asked one night, her voice tiny, and the question knocked the air from my lungs. Gloria, in stark contrast, was thriving. With Chloe's vibrant energy gone, my mother seemed to absorb it. Her feigned ailments vanished overnight. She had a new spring in her step, a vigor I hadn't seen in a decade. She embarked on a campaign of domestic conquest, rearranging the kitchen to her own illogical specifications, moving Chloe's spices to the back of the pantry, replacing her healthy cookbooks with her own ancient, food stained tomes. She began cooking the heavy, greasy meals of my adolescence: fried pork chops, buttery mashed potatoes, overcooked green beans, proclaiming it was real food for a working man. She was systematically erasing every trace of my wife's existence with a quiet, chilling glee. She even threw out the lemon verbena soap, replacing it with her own harsh, unscented brand. Her endgame became horrifyingly apparent about a month into my sentence. She announced one evening that she was having her sister, my Aunt Carol, and my cousin Tanya over for dinner. Tanya was a few years my junior, recently divorced, and a name my mother had been dropping into conversation with increasing frequency. Tanya is such a good traditional girl, Gloria announced as she placed a glistening pot roast on the table, the same meal Chloe had tried and failed to perfect for her. Not like these modern career women with all their ambitions. Tanya knows a woman's place is to make a nice home and support her man. She shot a conspiratorial wink at me across the table. And she's blood, Jamal. Family. You know you can always trust blood. Tanya offered me a demure, hopeful smile from across the table, a predatory glint in her eyes that mirrored her mother's. My stomach churned with revulsion. They were vultures, circling what they perceived to be a fresh carcass. They were auditioning my wife's replacement. They were planning to give my daughter a new mother. The thought was so monstrous, so utterly grotesque. It was like a bucket of ice water to the face, shocking me out of my grief-stricken stupor. I looked at my mother, her face glowing with smug satisfaction as she orchestrated the next chapter of my life, and the last remnants of fog in my brain burned away. This wasn't love. This was a hostile takeover. She hadn't saved me. She had isolated me. She hadn't protected me. She had imprisoned me. Claiming a migraine, I excused myself from the table, ignoring my mother's protests and Tanya's disappointed pout. I retreated to the only place that felt sacred in its sorrow, Maya's empty bedroom. I sat on the edge of her small bed, the silence roaring in my ears. I buried my face in her pillow, trying to inhale a lingering trace of her scent, a ghost of the life that had been stolen from this house. My hand brushed against something hard and rectangular beneath the pillow. It was her treasure box, a cheap wooden craft box she had painted with pink and purple swirls. It was where she kept her most prized possessions: a smooth gray stone from the river, a rare blue bottle cap, a pigeon feather she was convinced had fallen from an angel's wing. My fingers, clumsy with a sudden, inexplicable urgency, fumbled with the tiny latch. I lifted the lid. There, nestled amongst the mundane treasures of a 6 year old, was a small pink USB flash drive. It was one of mine, a cheap giveaway from a parts supplier that I kept in the junk drawer in the kitchen. I remembered giving it to her weeks ago when she was playing Office like Mommy. Wrapped around it was a small piece of tape. On it, in Chloe's neat, clear handwriting, was a single word: insurance. My heart seized, then began to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I snatched the drive and fled to my office, slamming the door and locking it, ignoring Gloria's concerned calls from downstairs. Jamal, honey, is everything all right? Her voice was laced with a false sweetness that now curdled my blood. I jammed the USB stick into the port on my computer. A single folder appeared on the screen. JNC Automotive Expansion, Chin Backup. I clicked it open. It was all there. Every file. The market analysis. The 5-year projections. The architectural sketches. The letters from the bank. The logo design. Everything. Chloe. My brilliant, methodical, forward-thinking Chloe. She had anticipated the sabotage. She had known my mother was capable of it, and she had created a failsafe, hiding it in the one place she knew my mother would never look. A wave of shame so profound it buckled. My knees washed over me. She had tried to warn me, and I had called her paranoid. As I stared at the screen, another memory surfaced, sharp and jarring. A few months ago, after some petty cash had gone missing from the shop office, Chloe had bought me a small, voice-activated digital recorder. For taking notes when you're under a car and have an idea, she had said. Just say record and talk. It's easier than trying to find a pen. I'd used it a few times, then left it on my desk, another piece of clutter, and forgotten about it. With a frantic energy, I rummaged through the mess of invoices and catalogs on my desk. There it was, tucked behind a mug full of pens, its small red light blinking faintly, indicating it was on standby. Its small screen showed it was nearly full. It was set to voice activation. It would have recorded any conversation of significant volume in the room. My hands shook as I plugged it into the computer and opened the audio files. They were organized by date and time. I scrolled back, my breath held tight in my chest, to the afternoon the business plan was deleted, to the days that followed. And then I found it, an audio file from the day after the brake sabotage. The timestamp was for the afternoon when I was at the shop and Chloe was out. The house should have been quiet. I clicked play. The sound of my mother's voice, clear as a bell, filled the silent office. She was on the phone. Ye know, Carol. He bought the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker, my mother said, her voice dripping with the smug satisfaction of a cat playing with a mouse. I could hear the faint tinny squawk of my Aunt Carol on the other end. He actually believed I accidentally wiped out her precious little project. The look on that witch's face. You would have paid to see it. She thinks she's so clever with her spreadsheets and her college degree. Trying to move in, take my son, fill his head with big ideas, and get her hands on his money. I built him from nothing after that good-for-nothing husband of mine left me, and I'll be damned if I let some little gold digger from the suburbs tear it all down. There was a pause. I felt the bile rise in my throat, hot and acidic. Oh, the car thing was a stroke of genius, even if I do say so myself, Gloria continued, her voice preening with self-congratulation. I watched Jamal do it once when he was bleeding the brakes on a truck. Just loosened a little nut. Nothing to cause a real crash. Heavens no, I'm not a monster. Just enough to give her a good scare. Just enough to make him think she's a reckless, distracted mother. That's the key, you see, Carol. You have to use the child. He'll do anything to protect the child. And right now, he thinks he's protecting Maya from Chloe. He has no idea he's protecting her for me. It won't be long now. He's already pulling away from her. Soon she'll get fed up and leave, and it will look like it was all her decision. He'll be heartbroken, of course, but I'll be right here to pick up the pieces. He'll be all mine again. Safe, the way it's supposed to be. The recording ended, but the voice echoed in the tomb of my office. The air was thick, unbreathable. Every sacrifice she'd ever claimed, every tear she'd ever shed, every I love you, baby, was a lie. A calculated, venomous, lifelong lie, designed to keep me tethered to her. She hadn't been protecting me. She had been curating me. My love for her, my guilt, my loyalty, they weren't virtues. They were the bars of a cage she had been constructing around me since I was 15 years old. And she had used her power as my warden to systematically destroy the only true freedom I had ever known. A rage, cold and pure and absolute, rose from a place deep within my soul. This wasn't about a business plan. It wasn't about a sabotaged car. This was about my life, my wife, my daughter. She had tried to steal my future, and I had handed her the keys. I saved the audio file to my phone. I stood up, my movements stiff, robotic. I walked out of the office and down the hallway. The sound of forced, polite laughter drifted from the living room. I walked to the stereo system on the bookshelf, a nice one Chloe had bought me for my last birthday. I plugged my phone into the auxiliary jack. Jamal, baby, what are you doing? We were just having a nice chat, Gloria said, her hostess smile faltering slightly as I turned the volume dial all the way to the right. I didn't answer her. I hit play. The sound of Gloria's triumphant bragging voice filled the suddenly silent room. He bought the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker. The laughter died in Tanya's and Carol's throats. They stared, their mouths slightly agape, their eyes wide. Gloria's face cycled through a series of rapid expressions, confusion to dawning horror to a pale, stark terror that was finally, blessedly real. The car thing was a stroke of genius, just loosened a little nut. Use the child. He'll be all mine again. Safe. When the recording clicked off, a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight descended on the room. My aunt and cousin were staring at my mother as if she had just sprouted scales and a forked tongue. Gloria finally found her voice, a desperate strangled squeak. Jamal, that's that's a fabrication, a trick. Chloe, she must have spliced that together to turn you against me. She's been gone for over a month, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously calm, devoid of all emotion. This was recorded on a voice-activated recorder on my desk, a recorder you never knew was there. It's been recording every lie you've told in this house for weeks. I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in my life without the distorting filter of a son's ingrained devotion. I saw a withered, pathetic, hateful woman, so consumed by her own fear of loneliness that she would risk her own grandchild's life to maintain her grip. You put Maya in danger, I said, the words like stones in my mouth. You loosened the brakes on a car with my daughter in it. You did that. To my little girl. She started to cry then, the old familiar tears that had been her most reliable tool. But the magic was gone. They were just salt water and manipulation. Jamal, baby, no, I did it for us, to protect you from her. Protect me? The word was a guttural roar, ripped from my throat, raw with 30 years of suppressed truth. You destroyed my family. You drove my wife away. You broke my daughter's heart. You didn't do it for me. You did it for you. Because you are a sick, selfish, twisted woman who would rather see me miserable and alone with you than happy with anyone else on this planet. Tanya and Carol were already scrambling for the door, grabbing their purses, desperate to escape the blast radius of my detonated life. They scurried out into the night without a backward glance, not wanting to be associated with the ugliness that had just been exposed. Jamal, please, Gloria begged, stumbling to her feet, her hands reaching for me. I'm your mother. You can't. Where will I go? What will I do? I recoiled from her touch as if from a hot poker. I don't care, I said, the coldness in my own voice shocking me. You have 1 hour. Pack one suitcase with whatever you can carry. Aunt Carol can come get you, and then you are going to walk out that door, and you are never, ever coming back. You will never speak to me again, and you will never see Maya again. If you ever try to contact us, I will walk this recording into a police station, and I will have you charged with felony child endangerment. Now get out of my sight. Her face crumbled, the mask of the manipulator finally dissolving to reveal the genuinely terrified, pathetic creature beneath. For a fleeting, horrifying second, a flicker of the old guilt, the old programming tried to surface. She's your mother. She's old. She's alone. But then I pictured Chloe's heartbroken face in my memory. I heard Maya's confused voice on the phone asking when she could come home, and the flicker died, snuffed out by a righteous, cleansing fury. 1 hour, I repeated, and turned my back on her for the last time. I walked out the front door into the cool night air, leaving her alone in the ruins of the world she had so carefully constructed. I didn't look back. I got in my truck, the engine turning over with a familiar, reassuring rumble, and I drove. The rain started halfway to Chloe's sister's house, smearing the streetlights across my windshield. Each swipe of the wipers felt like it was trying to clear my vision, to wipe away 30 years of delusion. I had the evidence in my pocket, the audio file, the USB drive, but I knew it was just leverage. The real work was something else entirely. I had broken something far more valuable than a business deal. I had broken my wife's trust, and that was the thing no mechanic could easily fix. I pulled up to the curb of a modest, tidy house with a porch swing and neatly trimmed hedges, a world away from the grease and noise of my own. A warm light glowed in the window. I saw a silhouette move past, unmistakably Maya, her pigtails bouncing. This was her home now, a home I had exiled her to. The thought was a physical pain in my chest. Taking a breath that felt like swallowing sand, I walked up the path and raised my hand to knock. The door opened before my knuckles touched the wood. It was Chloe. She was thinner, and there were shadows under her eyes I had helped put there. When she saw me, her expression hardened into a mask of weary, resolute defiance. "What do you want, Jamal?" Her voice was flat, devoid of welcome, the voice of a woman who had built walls to protect what was left of her heart. "Chloe, please," I began, my own voice cracking under the weight of all the unsaid things. "5 minutes. That's all I ask. I have to show you something. I have to explain." She hesitated, her hand tight on the doorknob, every muscle in her body poised to slam the door in my face. Her sister, a woman I'd only met a handful of times, appeared behind her, placing a protective hand on Chloe's arm. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You were right," I said, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. I pulled out my phone. "You were right about everything, every single thing. And I was a blind, stupid, pathetic fool. Please, just listen." Something in my utter brokenness must have penetrated her armor. She gave a short, sharp nod and stepped back, allowing me into the small entryway but blocking my path any further. The house smelled of cinnamon and clean laundry, the smell of a peaceful life I had forfeited. I didn't waste a second. I pressed play. As my mother's voice, smug and venomous, filled the small space, Chloe's face remained a stony mask, but in her eyes, I saw a hurricane of emotions. The bitter sting of validation, the deep ache of remembered pain, a flash of righteous anger, and finally, a profound, overwhelming sadness. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked at me, her gaze stripping away my pride, my excuses, my self deception, leaving me utterly exposed. "I kicked her out," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I gave her an hour. I told her if she ever came near us again, I'd go to the police. She's gone, Chloe, for good." I held up the small pink flash drive. "Maya, she kept it in her treasure box. You saved it. You tried to save us, and I threw it back in your face." The tears came then, hot and shameful, and I didn't fight them. I was a broken man, and I had no right to any pride. "I am so sorry. I know those words are cheap. I know they're not enough. I shattered everything. But a life without you, without Maya, it's not a life." It's just a sentence. She was my warden, Chloe, and I was her willing prisoner. But I'm free now. And the only thing I want to do with that freedom is spend every single day for the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust, trying to be the husband you deserve and the father Maya deserves. I sank to my knees on the welcome mat, the last of my strength gone, my shoulders shaking with sobs. I love you, I wept. Please, just tell me there's a chance. Tell me how to fix it. Chloe watched me for a long, silent moment. Her sister whispered something in her ear, but Chloe shook her head, her eyes never leaving mine. Finally, she knelt in front of me, bringing our faces level. Get up, Jamal, she said. Her voice was soft, but it held the strength of tempered steel. Kneeling won't fix this. Crying won't fix this. Words won't fix this. I struggled to my feet, my heart plummeting. This was it. The end. It's not going to be that easy, she continued, and a tiny, fragile spark of hope ignited in the darkness. You can't just banish the monster and expect the wounds to heal overnight. I need to see it. I need to know, in my bones, that you've changed, that you will choose us, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. I need to see you fight for this family as hard as you fought for her. Not with words, Jamal, with actions, every single day. Anything, I choked out, my voice raw. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. And so began the longest, most difficult repair job of my life. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It was slow, grueling, painstaking work. The first action was therapy. I found a therapist, a no nonsense woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, who saw right through my lifetime of excuses in our first 10 minutes. In her quiet office, smelling faintly of sandalwood, I was forced to dissect my relationship with my mother, to put clinical names like narcissistic abuse and emotional incest to the twisted dynamics I had always called love. I had to admit out loud that I had been an enabler, that my weakness had hurt the people I claimed to love most. It was brutal, humbling work, like stripping a car down to the bare frame, exposing every spot of rust and decay. The second action was legal. My lawyer drafted a restraining order. The day it was served, Gloria called me, weeping, from a number I didn't recognize. I listened for a moment to the familiar histrionics, the claims of betrayal, the pleas of a lonely old woman. The old programming screamed at me to soothe her, to fix it. Instead, I pictured Maya in the car on the bypass. I hung up and blocked the number without a word. It felt both monstrous and liberating, like amputating a gangrenous limb. The third and hardest action was patience. I put the house, the one attached to the shop, the one that reeked of her presence and my failure, up for sale. I moved into a small, sterile apartment. Chloe didn't move in. She didn't even visit. But she agreed to meet me for coffee once a week at a neutral cafe halfway between my apartment and her sister's house. Our first few meetings were stiff and painful. I talked about therapy, about the things I was learning about myself. She listened, her expression unreadable, her hands wrapped around her mug like a shield. Then she talked. She talked about the loneliness, the fear, the soul crushing exhaustion of being gaslighted in her own home, of being made to feel crazy. I just listened. I didn't defend myself. I didn't make excuses. I just bore witness to the pain I had caused, letting her words flay me because I deserved every single one. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild the bridge I had burned. I showed up for Maya. I went to her parent teacher conference and sat next to Chloe, a united front. I went to her T-ball games and cheered for her from the bleachers, respecting the space Chloe kept between us. One Saturday, I took Maya to the park. When I brought her back, Chloe was waiting on the porch. She missed you, Chloe said quietly. I missed you too, I replied, looking at my daughter, but meaning them both. It was a start. With the proceeds from the old house and every penny of my savings, I found a new house in a different school district, a house with a big backyard and a sun drenched room that was perfect for Maya. Before I put in an offer, I asked Chloe to see it. She was hesitant, but she came. I watched her walk through the empty rooms, and I saw a flicker of the old light in her eyes. I put the deed in both our names. 1 year to the day after Chloe had left, we stood together on a vast, dusty concrete floor. The cavernous space of the old Henderson warehouse echoed with the sound of Maya's laughter as she chased a sunbeam across the floor. Her new giraffe, a gift from me, tucked under her arm. Chloe held a clipboard, her face glowing. The loan was approved. The lease was signed. The contractors were starting on Monday. Our new logo was stenciled on the far wall in brilliant blue and silver. J&C Automotive. It has a good ring to it, she said, looking up at the high steel rafters, a small smile playing on her lips. I wrapped my arms around her from behind, pulling her tight against me, resting my chin on her shoulder. The smell of concrete dust and possibility filled my lungs. It was a better perfume than gasoline and hot metal. I like the sound of us better, I whispered, kissing her temple. She turned in my arms, and her eyes, clear and bright and full of a love I had almost lost forever, met mine. Me too, she said, and she leaned in and kissed me, a kiss that tasted of forgiveness and second chances, of hard work, and a future we were finally building on a new, solid foundation. My mother had taught me that blood was the only thing you could count on. She was wrong. The only thing you can count on is the family you choose, the family you build, and the family you are willing to fight for. My rock wasn't the woman who gave birth to me. It was the woman standing here with me, my partner, my brilliant engine of a wife, who had weathered my storm and had the grace and strength to teach me how to be a lighthouse. Our future stretched out before us, a wide open highway, and for the first time, we were driving it together.